Welcome to this explainer. So today we are going on a quest, a literal 1,000-year quest. We're going to track the absolutely incredible history of the British pound sterling, tracing its entire evolution from heavy physical bars of precious metal all the way to the digital wallets we carry around today. And we're going to frame this whole journey kind of like a classic 16-bit chronological video game quest through British history. Because honestly, the story of this currency is a massive saga of survival, constant upgrades, and total transformations. Okay, so consider this our level select screen. Our currency is going to travel through 5 main stages. First, the silver origins. Second, forgery, debasement, and rescue. Third, paper money and gold. Fourth, the decimal revolution. And finally, level 5, the digital frontier. Right, before we hit start, let's use this timeline as our loading screen just to try and comprehend the sheer, staggering age of the pound. We're talking about one of the world's oldest currencies still in continuous use. I mean, we're starting way back in the late 8th century with physical silver weights and moving all the way through to 2016 and beyond into today's fintech. Every single geopolitical, economic, and cultural transformation of the British Isles is mirrored right here in the money that people literally carried in their pockets. Okay, welcome to Level 1, the Silver Origins. To replace chaotic barter systems and leftover Roman coins, King Offa of Mercia introduced the silver penny in the late 8th century. Now, this is actually one of my favorite parts, because it brilliantly explains where some of the most enduring and, honestly, confusing aspects of British money actually came from. You might have seen the old PSD abbreviations in historical books or movies and wondered, why on earth does a D stand for penny? Well, it's a tripartite monetary framework that is directly rooted in Roman administrative history. The D stands for the Latin word denarius, the S is for solidus, or the shilling, and that famous pound symbol, the franc, it's actually just an incredibly ornate, fancy rendering of the letter L, which stands for libra, the Latin word for a pound or scales. But here is the absolute mind-blowing part about the original pound. It wasn't even a physical coin. Originally, a pound was strictly a unit of account. It quite literally meant the physical weight of 240 of those silver pennies we were just talking about. Just imagine having to carry around a literal tower pound of silver just to make a large purchase. And that number, 240, well, that became the foundational math of the British economy for literally centuries. Which naturally brings us to level 2, forgery, debasement, and rescue. Because every good quest has boss battles. When William the Conqueror decentralized minting across dozens of towns back in 1066, he accidentally invited 2 massive threats: rampant forgery and a huge struggle to maintain the purity of the metal. So, to fight back against this, English monarchs had to establish some really strict rules. King Henry II introduced the Tilby penny in 1158, and then later, in 1279, Edward I established the very strict sterling silver standard. By legally defining sterling silver as an alloy of exactly 92.5% pure silver and 7.5% copper, they basically created a benchmark for durability and value to try and combat the forgers. And honestly, it was so incredibly successful that sterling silver is still a world-famous standard of quality today. But how do you actually enforce that kind of strict standard? Well, you use one of the oldest judicial processes in the world, the trial of the pyx. Established in the late 13th century, this was this rigorous test where an independent jury of goldsmiths would literally take sample newly minted coins from a box, the pyx, and physically test them to make sure they hit that exact weight and purity. And what's absolutely amazing is that this ancient medieval testing tradition survives into the modern era. It's still used today to safeguard the integrity of the realm's currency. But, the currency's biggest threat didn't actually come from common everyday forgers. It came from the top. During the Renaissance, King Henry VIII found himself drowning in massive debts from his lavish lifestyle and his wars with France and Scotland. So, out of sheer desperation, he initiated what we now call the Great Debasement. He systematically reduced the actual silver in the coins, replacing it with cheap base metals like copper. And as people used the coins, the thin layer of silver would naturally wear off the highest point of the coin's relief, which just so happened to be the king's nose. So the copper shone brightly right there on his face, earning Henry VIII the wonderful derogatory nickname Old Copper Nose. This whole mess caused terrible hyperinflation, until his daughter, Queen Elizabeth I, swooped in and successfully executed a massive rescue mission in 1560 by recalling all the bad coins and reissuing pure sterling. All right, having survived the Tudors, it is time to move to level 3, paper money and gold. This takes us right to the late 17th century, where the physical form of the currency undergoes a fundamental, completely game-changing upgrade. So, during the English Civil War, merchants are getting extremely wary of storing their gold in the royal mint, especially after Charles I literally seized their bullion back in 1640. So step one, merchants started depositing their wealth with trusted goldsmiths instead. Then, step two, these goldsmiths started issuing paper receipts promising to pay the bearer on demand. And people pretty quickly realized, hey, trading a piece of paper is vastly easier than lugging around heavy gold. Finally, step three. In 1694, King William III needed a way to fund his wars against France, so he incorporated the Bank of England. The bank took these basic concepts and evolved them from handwritten goldsmiths' receipts into fixed denomination, official banknotes. And just like that, the modern concept of central banking was officially born. But there is a massive, fascinating twist in this level, and it's largely thanks to one of history's absolute greatest scientific minds, Sir Isaac Newton. In 1705, Newton became master of the Royal Mint. But then, in 1717, this brilliant physicist made a rather huge economic miscalculation. He issued a report that miscalculated the relative value of gold to silver. He essentially accidentally overvalued gold. Because silver was now officially undervalued in Britain, savvy opportunists realized they could simply melt down silver coins and smuggle them out of the country where they were worth more on the open market. This complete accident left Britain with a predominantly gold-based currency, which eventually got made official by the 1816 Coinage Act, turning Britain into a full-blown gold standard empire. Fast forward with me now to level 4, the decimal revolution. Arriving in the 20th century, that ancient medieval math of 240 pennies to a pound had become a massive, glaring obstacle to automated global trade. So the solution was finally executed on February 15, 1971. This was Decimal Day. Literally overnight, the United Kingdom officially abolished the shilling and completely rewired the pound, dividing it cleanly into 100 new pence. But, as you can imagine, you cannot just change a 1,000-year-old math system without a little bit of panic. The transition required an absolutely massive public education campaign. We are talking special television guides, posters plastered everywhere, and little cardboard calculated conversion tables handed out to citizens just to make sure merchants didn't use the confusion to artificially inflate their prices. I mean, when you really break it down, the pre-1971 math was just mind-bogglingly chaotic. You had farthings, which were literally a quarter of a single penny. The shilling was 12 old pence, which ended up perfectly translating to 5 new decimal pence. A florin was 2 shillings, or 10p. A crown was 5 shillings, which translates into a simple base 10 25p. It was this incredibly complex language of fractions that an entire modern nation just had to unlearn and replace basically in a single week. All right, which brings us to the final stage of our explainer today. Enter level 5, the modern era and the digital frontier. Unprecedented technological changes are right now pushing the pound into the 21st century. So let's look at the actual physical money first. In 2016, the Bank of England completely revolutionized cash by phasing out those traditional cotton paper banknotes. They replaced them with polymer notes. These are made from a highly advanced, flexible plastic film. The benefits? Well, they are vastly cleaner, they are significantly harder for forgers to counterfeit, and their durability is just off the charts. If you accidentally leave one of these in your pocket, it is literally tough enough to survive a full hot spin cycle in the washing machine and come out looking perfectly fine. But here's the really cool thing. The crucial takeaway is that while the materials are totally cutting-edge, space-age plastic, these deeply embedded, ancient traditions are still fully encoded right there in the currency. Following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, the design of the coin shifted. On all the new coins, the effigy of King Charles III faces left. Now, why is that? It's because of a centuries-old tradition dictating that a new monarch's profile must always face the exact opposite direction of their predecessor. Queen Elizabeth faced right, so King Charles must face left. It's this quiet, beautiful nod to an ancient past sitting right there on top of a modern polymer note or a freshly minted digital age coin. But this is where our quest leaves off on a massive cliffhanger. Today, physical cash usage is declining rapidly. Contactless payments, cards, and mobile wallets completely dominate the landscape. In response, the Bank of England is actually heavily researching a central bank digital currency, a digital pound that's colloquially known as Bitcoin. And it begs the ultimate question, doesn't it? As the whole world moves toward this borderless, digital-first economy, can a 1,200-year-old currency system successfully adapt yet again? Can a unit of account that was quite literally born as a weight of silver pennies in the 8th century somehow remain resilient as lines of digital code in the 21st? It is a fascinating thought to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep exploring the incredible history hidden right inside your own wallet.